Easter dinner had always followed the same quiet script. My mother cooked too much food. My brother arrived late, but was welcomed like the guest of honor. My father carved the ham and talked about the house, repairs it needed, things he planned to fix someday, the kind of small conversations people use to avoid larger ones. I usually sat at the far end of the table, not intentionally. It had just become the place where my plate ended up over the years. None of it had ever been openly hostile. It was more like a long pattern of small signals. My brother's achievements were family news. Mine were acknowledged politely and then folded away. For most of my life I assumed that was just how families worked. That Easter, my father kept clearing his throat between bites. At first I thought he was just tired. But after a while it started to feel like he was waiting for the right moment to interrupt the evening. Finally he set down his fork. "I've been thinking about the house," he said. Everyone looked up. The house was the center of most family conversations. My parents had lived there almost 40 years. He turned slightly toward my brother. "I've decided it makes sense to transfer the house to you. Keep it in the family. You'll take care of it." My brother nodded slowly, surprised but not unhappy. My mother gave a small approving smile, the kind that suggests the decision had been discussed already. I didn't say anything. I wasn't expecting anything from the house. It had always been clear my brother was the one connected to it. Then my father looked at me, not casually, deliberately. "You were never really part of this family anyway," he said. "Ask your mom why." The words landed without warning. For a second I thought I had misheard him. Nobody moved. Even the sound of silverware stopped. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was confusion, like hearing a private thought spoken out loud. I turned toward my mother. She didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the tablecloth, her fingers folding the same napkin corner again and again. She didn't deny it. That silence stretched long enough that I started to feel something strange beneath the shock. Not confirmation exactly, more like a puzzle piece suddenly sliding into place. Years of small distance. Moments that never quite made sense. Then a chair moved. My grandmother stood up slowly from the end of the table. She had been quiet most of the evening, the way older people sometimes observe more than they speak. But now she reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. The paper looked worn, like it had been handled many times. Her voice was calm. "I've waited 25 years to show you this." No one interrupted her. She placed the envelope on the table and opened it carefully. Inside were several documents, old letters, a hospital record, and a folded notarized statement. My grandmother looked at my father first. "You knew," she said quietly. Then she turned to me. "Before your mother and your father married," she explained, "my mother had been in a complicated situation. I had already been born. My biological father had disappeared long before I could remember anything about him. When my parents married, the truth had been discussed. My father had known. Not just privately, officially." She slid the notarized document across the table. It was a legal acknowledgement signed by my father the year they married. It confirmed that he accepted parental responsibility for me as his child, fully and permanently. Witnessed. Filed. Legally binding. The room felt smaller as everyone leaned forward to read. My brother frowned slightly, studying the page like he was trying to reconstruct a version of our family he had never been told about. My mother's eyes finally lifted, but they were filled with something heavy, regret more than fear. My father didn't reach for the paper. "You made your choice back then," my grandmother said, her voice steady. "You signed it. No one forced you. No one raised their voice. No one slammed the table." But the weight of the moment was unmistakable. A few minutes earlier my father had spoken like he held the final authority in the room, deciding who belonged, who didn't. Now the evidence of a different decision sat in front of everyone. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly I felt tired. Years of wondering why certain things felt slightly off had suddenly been explained in a few quiet sentences. My mother finally spoke. "I thought keeping it quiet would make things easier," she said. But nothing about the room looked easier. My father leaned back in his chair, staring somewhere past the window. The certainty he had earlier was gone, replaced by a kind of careful silence. The house, the inheritance, those things suddenly felt smaller than the truth that had been sitting inside my grandmother's purse for 25 years. Dinner ended without anyone formally saying so. Plates stayed half full. Conversations drifted into fragments. When I stood up to leave, my grandmother pressed the envelope into my hands. "You should keep these now," she said. Outside, the evening air felt cool and quiet. For most of my life I had assumed belonging was something you earned inside a family. Now I understood something different. Sometimes belonging had been decided long before you were old enough to know the story. And sometimes the truth simply waits, patiently, until someone finally opens the envelope.